Kyle here from allmediareviews.blogspot.com. Hopefully I can avoid having my head cut off like the last video. Did make a video on Tuesday for under circumstances, but today's Friday, September 23rd. It was 6 years ago. Had our, it was the night before the wedding. My wife and I got married anyway, so it's sort of a big deal. We're going to Stillwater and stuff, but again, we have people going to be over here taking care of our kitties and stuff, but I wanted to do a review and then maybe an update video about, but first the review of, I finally finished Jeff Wagner's book, Destination Onward, Story of Fate's Warning. And I've talked about it, here and there over the whatever I made, would have been 16 videos on the Fate's Warning discography, 17 I guess with the ranking. And it's really a good, thorough book from a fan's perspective, but it gives the origins of, I can show the pictures. I know, again, Pete Pardo did a review. He did the same thing. He was showing the photos, and I think I did that maybe when I initially got it. I can't remember on one of my the video blogs or something like that. But it tells the story, basically, of every album, all these eras, the tours. Most of the tours, at least most of the parts of the tours, no mention of the tours that end up coming to the Minnesota. Of course, I saw two of them. But the tours themselves, the Sabotage tour that I saw, which ended up being Sabotage's sort of last official tour in 2001, and then like a lot of stuff with record labels, and they put out an album and they had to wait to tour for it, how many dates, and just the memberships, like a lot of bands, Fate's Warning has had they're not Rush, they're not U2, they're not King's X. They've had a grand total of it's a dozen members. If you count when they were Misfit, and then anyway. But yeah, it's very thorough. Jeff Wagner, I like his books. I had this stack of books right over here. When I was trying to find my King's X book, so I'm going to show just a minute. I got his book from, and this is kind of damaged. I read this. This is on just progressive metal. He wrote a book on Peter Steele also between these two books that I'm not much. I did see Typo Negative live once. I don't know if that's on my consoles. I did see them live. I'm not that into them, but I know he was a sort of a fascinating character. But I can understand why there might be a reason to write a book about him. But it's not really as much in my wheelhouse. But prog metal, progressive metal history, and Fate's Warning specifically obviously are. He's going to write a book on Voivod now, which that one I'm sort of on the fence on because I'm not that big of a Voivod fan, although I'm sure given I like his writing, I may be on the fence and may eventually I may buy it, but it's like reading to me, recreational reading really requires, even more than watching a television series, really requires my sort of attention and time. It's disposable time, and so, and I'm not the fastest reader, I can read, it's not like I can't read, but so, and if it flows well, and his books do, I love a lot of the photos, the little, I can find parts where he had little references you'd see on Wikipedia, right here at the bottom there you can see where he's going on about something or some quote or some story that's referenced in there, and then there's more to that need to get context that he probably added after he wrote it, or I don't know. It kind of gives me perspective in a way because it's I wanted to write a book of my own. Lorenzo from Alt Prog Core's done it, and all these other people have run across. I've written books, and I've written in a blog for a decade over. I did it over. I'm doing it the last couple of years, of course. Why couldn't I write a book? And my idea is write about the sort of art rock, progressive rock, alternative progressive rock, whatever of the 21st century. But it requires a lot of time and dedication and discipline to do something like this, and you need to have the right sort of opportunity and to get it published. And there's a lot that goes into it. So I'm not sure if it's really meant to be for me, but I would love to do it. But reading his books, kind of because I think first and foremost, he is just a music fan of progressive rock and especially a metal fan. And he was an editor at Metal Maniacs, and he works for Inside Out, so he has more of a professional, background in this kind of stuff. I don't do that for a living. The company I work for has nothing to do with music, so. But if I won the Mega Millions, if I had the money, if I could quit my job and and do this, this would be something I might pursue. I don't know, but yeah, just getting back to this book. I mean, I think the latter of the last 20 years were they were covered, but they weren't as in detail. Probably there weren't as many stories to tell. Maybe why maybe the last album, the Long Day Good Night, was the final album. That kind of stuff. Why members left. I mean, basically at the end of the time, the only sort of Joey Vera basically became an official member, though I think it was later than the book actually said. But really, it was just Ray, Alder, and Jim Matheos, really. It's a little bit like Yes. Their history is similar to Yes. Not as much Genesis, but Yes, where Chris Squire was the one member throughout the whole history until their last album. But then you had members kind of coming and going. Now, there aren't too many members that come. Frank Oresti is really the only member of Fates Warning that rejoined, sort of semi-rejoined. But, yeah, learning about John Arch, his history. I mean, understanding why he left, why he had to leave, why he was, he couldn't really handle the touring, and he had a little bit of a sort of a stage, wasn't stage fright maybe exactly like Andy Partridge or Anthony Phillips of Genesis, but it was more of that he got to be, the whole pressure of the process of touring and having to be ready to sing every night got to him psychologically to a point, it sounded like. But I think he overcame that to a point, but that's also why Arch Matheos never really did extensive touring. They did the Awaken the Guardian reunion shows, but that was like a grand total of like 5 shows in the span of like 6 years. So he wasn't really committed and requiring to do this like night, every couple nights, this long, extensive performance. He did perform at Prog Power USA in 2016. It was like 2 weeks before my wedding 6 years ago. Unfortunately, that wouldn't have been in the cards. I didn't even go to the Deer Hunter concert in town here. I went to Marillion after that in Chicago, but I would have loved to have seen that. I've never seen John Arch. I probably never will, unfortunately, because although Fates Warning still are interested, there's still some thought and desire to tour for Long Day Good Night at some point. So maybe I'll get one more chance to see the band. Maybe small. I've only seen them 3 times, but I wish there was more. I wish there would have been a little more sort of that whole. Because I remember reading an interview with Jim a few years back about. A few years, probably over 10 years, maybe 15 years ago, about A Pleasant Shade of Grey, the album, what it's about. It's a little bit like The Lamb Lies on Broadway. It's like Pilgrim's Progress. It's to go into detail about what it's specifically supposed to be about is not something Jim really ever wanted to talk about so much. It's like it's all up, just left there and let the listener interpret it. They do talk a little bit about it, but it seems like it's more of what Jeff's. So there were some quotes, I think, but what Jeff's perception. But my thought was always about a guy who was looking back on his life to an extent and looking at where he is right at the current time. And it's like why certain things had to happen or did happen, regrets he could go back in times. And I think still remains also, although learning about that song, that piece, about the death of his father makes a little more sense now, but that has some echoes of that and something from nothing to, some of the songs on Disconnected. It's weird how Disconnected, though, even the band, like Jim himself said he would change some things about it. I just think Disconnected was just, other than the dragging sort of repetitious over your head parts of So, Disconnected was an achievement in songwriting and sonic production, and I don't know. I just love that record. I don't follow all the sort of. It reminds me of what King's X said. I'm going to be talking about them now about Manic Moonlight. They look back at that record and kind of scoff at it to an extent. They don't love it. It's like I personally think it's fantastic. So I don't know. It's good to get insights about that. Learning about the bass player Bones, all the nicknames and stuff, and why he left the band, why each member left the band. That's probably the best thing that you get from this book, among other things, is that you understand why each member ended up leaving. Steve Zimmerman was the only member of Fates Warning that wasn't really comfortable leaving when he had to depart the band. Although I don't know if there's really... They did reunions with him, so I don't think there's any real angst or, As it turned out, what they were doing, the sort of jazzy, more technical music they were going into with Perfect Symmetry just probably wouldn't have fit him. So, but yeah, this is a great read. I mean, you know, it's Fates Warning. They're an underdog. It's a band that deserves this story. Whereas Queensryche and Dream Theater, you know, had that success. And the whole experience with Parallels, Mark Zonder references toward the end of the book again, how Parallels is a great record, but it's a frustrating record in the sense that, you know, they had songs that could have found a larger audience, and just, it was not due to their own circumstance, it was due to really what happened with the label. And, you know, I remember reading about it. In fact, maybe in the Parallels, you know, like, remastered deluxe edition that came out, there's a documentary, they talk a little bit about that, how that was a really frustrating album to make for them, and that they were supposed to do it. They had Jim had all the songs written, they went to Toronto, and then they spent weeks, if not months, not working on it. They were they were worrying about where they were going to have dinner and where they were going to wash their clothes and all this stuff. And but as it turned out, all that time that they had to invest, all the extra time, really in a way seemed to pay off from a product standpoint. What came out of it, and that's how James LaBrie ended up, because they were in Toronto, and James LaBrie hadn't even sung on Dream Theater's album, but Jim had gotten to know Mike Portnoy, and he said you should talk to James LaBrie. He's from Canada. He's our new singer, and he came down there. And that's how he ended up. Even though you can't really hear him on Life in Still Water at all, I want to hear like the actual masters. I can hear isolated vocal, like sort of Kevin Gilbert's Dance of the Iron, you know, Sweet Fugi, to hear them isolated. But yeah, it's interesting to learn more in detail about what really the process of what happened with Parallels, and that really was that's the most significant part of their history in some ways. That, and then how Pleasant Shade of Grey came out. It's like they loved making that album. I wasn't sure about that. I wasn't aware of that. But it very much was like Rush when they made 2112, or Dream Theater when they made Scenes from Memory. It's like, you know what, I'm gonna do whatever the hell I want. I don't give a rat's ass what anyone wants, and if it's our last album, it's our last album. We're going on our own terms. And it turned out the opposite, where it really kind of reinvigorated the band, and many people like myself can still consider it the best work they ever did. So that's it on Destination Onward. If you read the book, you know, if you want to read the book, check it out. Go to, I think it's called FatesWarningBook.com, and given the condition of my copy, which is like 2 months old, I may have to pick up another copy of it. But I have one more Fates Warning video I might make, because on the Dream Theater forums now, we're going to do a top 50 Fates Warning songs list, and I'm going to submit a list. As much as I don't like doing this, the whole A Pleasant Shade of Grey thing is all screwed up, where they're having you vote for each individual part. I think it's one song, but I think what I'll do, if I have the time, I'll publish a top 50. I never made a top songs for the Deer Hunter or Kevin. I could do that too, I suppose. I did it in the blog, in Marillion. Maybe I'll try to make a top songs list for all those artists, and then Fates Warning. Like I'll do the Fates Warning one first, because I'm about to submit that for the next few weeks. And I did find, let's get this off of here. I did find my King's X book by Greg Prado, which I've only paged through. This has some photos too. I was going to add one other note about King's X. I'm going to try doing a video in a bit here. But yeah, this is from 2000. Let's say it was 2017, 2018. There's a lot of information. I could actually Google it. Let's see, what is it? It should say in here. 2019. So it was only a couple of years. It was right when I bought this house. So yeah, I never read this. And now that I'm only just like, there's a lot of quotes here. That's what this largely is. It's just like band members and people, friends and industry people, quotes, as opposed to something like more of a literal story, the way that Destination Onward is. But this is the oral history of King's X. Again, King's X, the oral history by Greg Prado. I'll be reading this, and I read the first couple pages of the introduction and everything, the foreword from Scotty and of Anthrax. And then I'm going to be going through the King's X stuff. But King's X and Fates Warning, it's interesting. This is what I heard. I don't remember how many. I thought it was when I was in Milwaukee talking to this guy at the Flower King show, but I don't remember. It was sometime in the early 2000s. Some guy was talking after a show, talking about bands. We talked about, because we were King's X fans. I don't think it was after a King's X show, we were Fates Warning fans. That's right. Maybe it was at the Fates Warning show in 2001. I associate when I was at Shank Hall in Milwaukee, but anyway, apparently the two of them in the 90s, honestly, probably around the Pleasant Shade of Grey period, there was a chance that the two of them were going to tour. Like, they're both, when King's X signed to Metal Blade and they released that Best of King's X, I think it was, and then Tapehead, or maybe it was when, I don't know, Tapehead was on Metal Blade. I'm not sure if Best of King's X was, but anyway, they were trying to get a tour together. Actually, King's X is mentioned a couple times because they were kind of contemporaries in, you know, the metal scene and stuff like that, and then the Metal Blade thing eventually. And I guess King's X kind of bowed out. I don't know the deal. This is what he told me. I've never seen much detail about what happened, but there was going to be a tour with the two of them together, and it didn't happen. I should go back. Maybe it's in here. I kind of doubt it. I should go back and look. Even the fact that Ray Alder from Fates Warning is from Texas. He probably knew King's X. The King's X, well, they're not from Texas originally, from Missouri. You know, the members aren't necessarily from, but they met in Missouri, formed Missouri, but they spent the large majority of their career in Texas. The Texas connection, plus the fact that Bobby Jarzon Beck, the last, 15 years, is now a member of Fates Warning. Is also from Texas because he was with Watchtowers from Texas. The two of them could have toured together, I guess. There was a potential, and King's X, I guess, or their management maybe, decided no, they don't want to do it. They didn't want to go out with Fates Warning. I don't know why. It's a question maybe to do research I could follow up with, but yeah, King's X is gonna be fun. I'm gonna try filming a video or two about them and start going on this. It'll probably be similar to Fates Warning. It'll probably take me about 2 months, maybe a little less. I don't know if I'm gonna be home more now during the day, but and then I'm reading this book. So I actually have, among the stack of books back here that I was finding, it's kind of sacrilegious for me. I also have the Marillion book, which came out like in 2012 or 2013. I never read through. I read through the beginning of this. So I'm starting to read more now, even if it's just about. And Dream Brother, the Jeff Buckley book I've got, which I've read parts of this. I haven't read every detail, so you know. I'm not the best reader. Even if it's about music, it's not. And there's like books like Snow Crash I want to read, and I've read The Time Traveler's Wife and The Rule of Four. Those are the two books in like the Harry Potter series. But those are the two books that I've, like, novels over the last couple decades I've really enjoyed that I've read. But anyway, thank you for watching. Like I said, what do you think of Jeff Wagner's book, Destination Onward? I'd love to hear your take. Again, I'd love to hear you order it, and then put a comment and reply once you finish reading it in a few months or whatever. So, but thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and see you next time.